Okay, this is official. Welcome everybody to the first lecture. Great start. The first lecture of a series of lectures that I intend to provide here in the Insider Circle. And the reason I thought about doing these lectures was because one of the things that I enjoy to do is painting a picture of who we are, how we think, how we move, how we behave, and how all of this picture, this awareness, influences how we're progressing. And why is progression important? Well, for me, I am always curious about our evolution, our adaptation, our changes. And as a coach, I dedicate my time to facilitate progress. So this is part of painting a picture to assist you and assist myself in painting a picture of where we are, where we come from, and where we're going. And a lot of this picture painting is about trying to identify what it means to be fit. And something that I've talked about before many times, so you've all heard it before, is that fitness is our capacity, our ability to meet a standard. And when we are able to meet said standard, and the standard can be completely arbitrary or a standard that has been set for us, influenced by maybe an environment or a particular context. When we can meet these standards, we break through. And when we break through, we start to transcend, and this transcendence brings growth. And growth, from a human experience, although it can be painful at times, brings a sense of fulfillment, completion. And what is this sense of fulfillment and completion? Well, it is health. And there are three different aspects of health that I would like to explore. One, the performance side. And the performance side is our ability to express ourselves at a very high level with great precision and accuracy, with the intention of moving towards getting a need met or meeting a standard. So performance. I would also like to talk about life. And when I talk about life, I'm not only talking about the nature of life, but the unique experience of each individual. I see it as at the very top of this pyramid is performance. It's this high level expression. And at the bottom of that pyramid, at the base, is you, the individual. And when we are able to study how we perform individually, we begin to understand why we are the way we are collectively. And this is where individual progress leads to collective progress. And that is what I am personally obsessed with. And I believe that if we can have a conversation around this based on a common ground, a common picture, as I was saying earlier, that I want to paint, it's easier to begin, catalyze a dialogue. And this dialogue leading to questions, and questions leading to answers, and the answers leading to clarity, and that clarity allowing you to make better decisions, and each one of those decisions leading to motion. So that's the intention of these lectures, and that's the intention that I have as a coach, is to assist every single person I can in learning how to get their needs met. And the learning process requires identifying a few things. And in these lectures, I want to assist myself and you in identifying those. Now, in addition to painting this picture that I was mentioning, it's inspired by a sense of curiosity that I had when I was at the end of my gymnastics career, which was the curiosity around our environment, this planet. And what led me to choose to go to school and study in university environmental science. And when I first started in environmental science, I heard a professor on day one say that the most important subject was genetic engineering. That's what we had to really get into if we wanted to be a part of the future. And that was at the time when the human genome was being sequenced, and there was a lot of excitement around genetics. There still is, but that was the first big breakthrough in genetics applied to medicine, health, and unfortunately really started changing the way that agriculture and thus our collective health was influenced. But regardless of that, genetic engineering, genetics was the future. And when I got into genetics, it was interesting to me. The topic was interesting, but my ability to work on things that I could not see was something that I struggled with. I struggled to be in a lab with a lab coat on, and working with these micro elements that were just challenging for me to get excited about. And thus I started to move in a different direction in my career. And that was towards the macro, towards the big stuff. And this is when I got into marine biology, and I started specializing in marine biology, which led me to Singapore, where I got to study and work under a professor, Professor Chow, at the National University of Singapore. And I had a great mentor there. Her name was Karen Tun. And I got to work on several projects there that were interesting. Some of them were in relationship to cleaning water. So it was bioremediation by using organisms such as sponges, mussels, and algae to filter water and clean it out of sediments, heavy metals, and a few other things. And this was very exciting to me, and I thought this was going to be my future. But of course, the universe had other plans. But Singapore led me to come to the US. And I came to the US in 2004. And I came to the US to work at the Marine Mammal Center, which is here in Marin County in California. And there I was doing research and working with California sea lions and studying a few things that were occurring to them. Which was a disease called domoic acid, which was basically an infection of the brain, and leptospirosis, which was an infection of the kidneys. And I got to do a lot of necropsies, which is basically like autopsies of these sea lions. And that was very interesting to me, a little gruesome, but interesting. And somewhere along the line, I got lost because I needed money. And I needed to finance this non-lucrative career that I was on the path of, which was the exploration of the environment. And it was non-lucrative because I didn't understand how to make it lucrative. But nonetheless, I got into coaching gymnastics, which was my background as a kid growing up. And I see Jason is commenting that lepto was a real hazard in the streams in Hawaii. Yes, this is true. Actually, the Marine Biology, the Marine Mammal Center has a center in Hawaii where they cover all the coast there, and it's a big deal. So yes, this is very true. Anyways, I got into gymnastics. I started coaching gymnastics, got me into fitness, and this is when I realized that my path towards understanding the environment required me to understand who we were as humans first, in order to be able to work with all other living organisms, and thus assist in any way that I could in bringing understanding and knowledge of the importance of our environment, and our environment being that which influences our behavior. And we're all here because we're curious about performance, we're curious about health, and we're curious about taking our lives into new levels of expression. Or so I believe. If you're here because you're here for something else, please feel free to share in the chat, because I would love to hear that. So this first lecture is going to be Lecture 1, dedicated to simply reminding us of the picture that we currently have of who we are as a species, and why this picture of who we are as a species is interesting in the conversation of fitness, performance, and personal development. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen here. We're going to go through a quick little slideshow, and I'll use this as a way of having some talking points, and that way we can stay organized and on track. But if anybody, as we go, has any questions, or you want me to stop, or you would like to dialogue about something that comes up, just leave a message in the chat, and when I'm done with this presentation, we can go over those things. So the name or the title of this lecture is Smart Body, Strong Mind. And the origin of Smart Body, Strong Mind comes from when in 2005, I was coaching gymnastics. I decided that I also wanted to have my own private business. And I started my private business and I called it Naka Athletics. Naka is in Japanese inside, and athletics is, of course, as you know, physical performance. And I called it Naka Athletics because I knew that the highest level of physical performance, although expressed outwardly, came from within. And I was looking for some kind of catchy motto or title, and I was thinking, yeah, strong body and smart mind, strong body and smart mind. And I told my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, Tanya, and she said, that's too obvious. How about smart body, strong mind? And when she said that, I was like, this is why we're together. You're smarter than I am, and you're more creative in these ways, especially with words. So that stuck. And this idea of having a smart body and a strong mind is what I believe is the foundation of personal development. And within the personal development, having a collective development, and that collective development influencing the direction in which we move as individuals. So this title is called, this lecture, sorry, is Smart Body, Strong Mind. Let's see if I can move back. For some reason, it's not allowing me to. Here we go. And this is what it's all about. It's identifying what does it mean to be smart. And if we just take the definition of being smart, it's having or showing, expressing a quick-witted intelligence. And as we've talked about many times, the word intelligence is the ability to read in between the lines. And reading in between the lines is part of our awareness. It's a part of our understanding of things. It's that which goes a little bit unspoken. And that's relevant because the movement, the expression of our body is one that is unspoken. And this is where I think it's important also to acknowledge what intelligence is, which is that it's the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. And as we've said before, knowledge is the accumulation of information, and the knowledge, when put into context, is what gives us understanding, which is what we're going to try to be doing with these lectures. And the skills are the habits, the particular expressions that we utilize to navigate this world. So this is important to simply keep in mind. So when we're speaking about intelligence or speaking about smarts, that we have something to fall back on. These two definitions: smart, having or showing a quick-witted intelligence, and intelligence being the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. Simple. Now, on the other hand, strong, strength, what is it? Well, one of the definitions is the ability to perform a specified action well and powerfully. Now, this right here, the ability to perform a specified action well and powerfully, is what we do as performers, what we do at the peak of our expression. And I want you to simply think about right now, where in your life are you able to perform specifically well and powerfully? Where do you perform specifically well and powerfully? This is one of the hardest questions to answer because it's something that requires a high level of self-reflection and then the ability to move past our ego, our egocentric self, to define who we are. And this can be scary for a lot of us to define who we are, because the moment we try to define who we are, we put ourselves in a box, and that can be a trap. But as we're going to see throughout the series of lectures that I'm going to be sharing with you, is that putting yourself in a box for a little bit is key in order to be seen. And this is kind of paradoxical. How is it that if you put yourself in a box that you can be seen? Won't you be hidden? Well, maybe that box is transparent. Maybe that box is simply a position. It is acknowledging where you are right now in your state of evolution. And this box, this position, this state of evolution is temporary. As we know, the only constant is change. I believe it was Heraclitus who said that. So what we're going to do today is we're going to focus on this ability to perform a specified action well and powerfully, to simply go through the history of our species. Okay, so this is a very brief and general timeline of what we've gone through, and keep in mind that the numbers and dates that I may share here are our current understanding, or at least the majority agrees that this is the current understanding, although there is much more to share. So I just want to preface this, that this is most likely, I want to say almost guaranteed, not accurate, but to the academic understanding, pretty spot on. So I want to start with this little guy. I don't know if you've ever seen this little guy. This is, of course, not real. This is something that has been kind of stuffed and imaged, or created in the image of this little monkey that existed 55 million years ago. Some believe maybe 60 million years ago. What does 5 million years do? Not much, huh? Anyways, this little guy is one of my favorite little monkeys that I remember studying, and especially because of its name. If you can say the name Plesiodapis, you are advanced in the world of biology. Is there anybody who has ever seen a Plesiodapis in pictures or heard of one? Just raise your hand, wave like this. If you've never seen one, here is one. This is what we believed it looked like. So Maya has seen it. Excellent. And then 27 million years ago, as the old world of monkeys was evolving, all of a sudden, these monkeys started to change their behavior and physically adapted in one particular way, which was, one, in growth. Two, they lost their tails. So these are the great apes. They didn't have tails, just like us. Although we, when we're a fetus, we do go through a stage where our sacrum does look like a tail. Anyways, that's a quick little aside. And then 7 million years ago, approximately, some believe it's maybe 5 million years ago, but who knows? We don't know. We believe this is what the fossil record says, is that 7 million years ago, we separated from the chimpanzees. And the one on the right here is the chimp. The one on the left is the hominid. And something that I'll just share later, just out of curiosity, is that one of the biggest changes that you'll see here, just physically speaking, is in the teeth and the mouth. And this is something that, just out of curiosity, we'll talk about in a little bit. And then 300,000 years ago, which not long ago, we thought it was 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens appeared. We are Homo sapiens. This is our species, and this is a depiction of what the modern human looked like 300,000 years ago. And 10,000 years ago only, we were the last hominid standing, meaning we had basically survived several extinctions, and who knows, we were probably an influence in those extinctions. One of the beliefs is that Homo sapiens not only mated with the Neanderthals in Europe, but also killed them off. I think there was a quote that I found the other day. Let's see if I have it, just because I thought it was good. I remembered it from Noah Harari's book, Sapiens. Oh, here it is. He said that for Homo sapiens, the Neanderthals were too familiar to ignore, but too different to tolerate. Now, this is part of belief systems that we're going to talk about, and I just found that to be pretty interesting, as we are the last ones standing. You must ask yourself, how is that possible? Well, it is, and here we are, and this is the reality that we currently live in. And this has happened relatively quick. Our evolution as a species has been relatively quick, and I'm going to explain what I mean by relatively quick in a little bit. But first, I just wanted to acknowledge a few physical adaptations that we've seen over the years that are important. One of them is our feet. And as you can see here, on the left, you have the bone structure of a human being. And on the right, a pan-troglodyte is actually a chimpanzee. You have the foot of a chimpanzee. And there's a very big difference, which is the big toe. And that big toe, as you can see in the human being, is pretty much straight forward, close and parallel almost, small angles to the rest of the toes. And in the chimp, it's prominently angled inward or towards the midline, outward, almost creating this thumb-looking foot. And of course, why this is interesting is because when you go through the fossil record and you start to look at what you're finding, you start to see a clear divide at a certain time where the bone structure in the foot changes. And this is an indication of us evolving into walking on 2 feet. Now, this is something, the concept of being bipedal, which is just walking upright, has a lot of theories. It's not clear why we adapted this way. But one of the interesting things that is theorized is that it was the product of realizing that you could manipulate fire. And I'll talk a little bit about that later as an important adaptation and something that we should keep in mind in our own evolution. So interesting that the feet started to change. The other thing that we saw was that the mouth changed, the teeth changed, which meant that there was a change in diet. One of the things that is believed is that the reason we became bipedal is because when we started gathering, we needed to carry things. And with that carry, we changed the way that we ate, and thus we changed that mouth structure, the bone structure, the teeth structure. And not just that, there of course were probably contributing factors like the food that we ate, which didn't require one to be sawing through the food, but rather grinding it down, thus requiring a different type of tooth structure or using your mouth differently. The canines in the front, of course, are shredders, and then the molars and premolars are the ones that are more like grinding. And this is simply something interesting to keep in mind, because if you're not using the canines, the shredders, of course, eventually you're going to adapt into a different type of mouth, especially if you are familiar with how genetic mutations occur and those adaptations carry on and are transferred over into one's descendants. And then the last thing I wanted to share was this, which is a picture of 3 skulls here. And what we're looking at is we're looking at a picture from below the skull. So basically what we're seeing here is the roof of the mouth. There's no jaw. That jaw has been removed. And what we're really looking at here is this hole right here. Do you guys see this hole in the middle of the skull, in the middle one here on the back? That is called, I think the Latin name is foramen magnum, which means big hole. And it's the hole that allows the brain to move into the spine, into the central nervous system. And as you can see on the left and right images, that hole is further back. In the middle picture, it's more centered. What does this indicate? Well, this middle skull right here is the skull of a Homo sapiens, and this one on the left, I believe it's a chimp. And what's the difference here? Well, the difference is that the chimp mostly walks, uses locomotion, where they use 4 legs. They're walking on all 4s, whereas the human, the one in the middle, walks on 2 legs, is bipedal. And what this is indicating is a difference in the position of the head. The human stands upright, and by standing upright, the position of the central nervous system going into the spine is positioned right under the skull. But for the chimp that walks on 4 legs, the head position looks like this. It's one that is extended. It needs to lift the head. Thus, the hole has moved to the back end of the skull. Why is this interesting? Well, because right now I'm sitting here at a computer and I'm looking at you guys, and my posture is definitely not perfect. I am regressing, devolving into what we used to be. And this, by simply becoming aware that a change in behavior affects us physically, and thus that can be carried on generations beyond our own, is important because it gives us a new sense of responsibility. And these are things that are simply found in the fossil records, and we get to see present in apes, monkeys, and ourselves today. So these fossil records are still alive. And a few important adaptations beyond the physical ones are the following. 1, fire. Somewhere along the line, we realized that this fire was an energy source, that 1 could burn us. It could burn a whole field. It could kill us. But also, when handled with care, could be manipulated. And that manipulation leading to protection and our ability to make our food, especially the meat, more digestible, and thus be able to consume higher caloric meals. And this increasing our ability to do work. So fire was a huge thing. And the question I always ask myself is, what is the modern fire? What is that which exists in nature right now that is available to all of us, that is transforming us as much as fire did back in the day? Maybe you think technology. Maybe you're thinking something else. Whatever that may be, I'm here to simply allow you and remind you to look out for that, because you are part of our evolution as a species. I mentioned Noah Harari earlier. I don't know if you have read any of his books like Sapiens or Homo Deus, but he believes that in 1,000 years, we will no longer exist. Homo sapiens will no longer be Homo sapiens. We will be a different species. We will be, like Elon Musk says, a cyborg. In fact, Neuralink right now is connecting brains to computers. And this is happening now. Trials in humans are happening right now. This means that you can maneuver a computer, you can have access to all the information without touching anything, simply through thought. And this is where tool making comes in. Tool making was a big one. And tool making was probably built for not only hunting and gathering, but also creating shelter, better shelter. And in addition, the tool making, which was utilized to maybe manipulate fire and thus allow Homo sapiens to no longer live in trees, but actually be able to live on the floor. Imagine sleeping on the African savanna on the floor. Without fire around you, you're a sure target and meal. So the creation of tools allowed for the manipulation of the energy sources and direct it in different ways. But the hunting and gathering was interesting because it did two things for our species. One, it allowed us to organize ourselves. And two, it allows us to administer our resources. This administration of resources is key because it's part of what we struggle with today. We struggle with administering, managing our time. That's a resource. We struggle with administering and managing our finances, our money. We struggle to administer and manage the energy that we spend in relationships, in development of work, care, whatever it may be that you do on a daily basis. So these are key things to keep in mind that we did millions of years ago and still are relevant today. And then agriculture. I mean, there were a couple of revolutions. There was the cognitive revolution, which led to being able to think and becoming Homo sapiens, the wise hominid. There was the agriculture revolution, which is believed to have happened in 12,000 years ago, but maybe it could have gone longer. I don't know if you follow people like Graham Hancock or Randy Carlson and things like what has popped up in Turkey, like Göbekli Tepe, and these megaliths that indicate that there was probably a more advanced civilization than we thought 12,000 years ago. Anyways, agriculture was a big one. And think about how food is influencing the way that we make decisions these days. And when it comes to performance, how important it is to fuel yourself in a healthy way. And this is something that has led to the diet culture. And I think now what is happening is that the diet culture is falling apart. It's too fragile. It doesn't really work. And that's what we're here to really question and to really start to explore is how are we thinking about our diet and what is a diet? It's really a lifestyle. And it's a lifestyle related to not only how we fuel ourselves, but also how we administer resources around the world. And this slide I've added as a transition slide because in addition to fire, tool making, hunting and gathering, and being able to grow things, agriculture was the first expression of genetic engineering, really, because you would bring seeds and you would plant them in front of your house so you didn't have to walk hundreds of miles or long distances. It allowed you to live in one place. It allowed you to become a more effective civilization, a more effective tribe. But we also had this, art, artistic expression. And art came before the written language. And every single one of us, I'm thinking about Nico, who's here. He's been doing some great talks on his Instagram, on his stories that I interpret as artistic. And I'm looking at Sarah, who clearly uses the language of movement to artistically express and communicate a thought. So art is key. I believe these hands are found in Argentina and the province of Santa Cruz. But a fascinating, beautiful, something that is just amazing to be able to look back thousands of years and see hands that look like ours in a cave that probably thought similar, felt similar, were similar, yet had a completely different perspective of reality. And one of the reasons I'm so excited about sharing this is because one of the things that we have done as a species is we become specialists. We have specialized so much that we have lost our ability to look at the stars, look at the environment, read the environment. I mean, basic things like walking through a forest and knowing that you will find moss on the north side of a tree trunk is something that is very basic when it comes to navigation and understanding of an environment that most people, the majority of us, don't need to know anymore because we live in these concrete forests, these concrete jungles, and everything is kind of done for us. We have Google Maps. It tells us where north is. And there is a transition that we're going through, I believe, and an evolutionary transition that we're going through right now with the pandemic that we just navigated, which made the bandwidth a little narrower and has actually sped things up. That is requiring us to become generalists again, and in a way, learn the old ways. And this is something that I've been considering as a book title or subtitle of a book, which is The Ancient Technology of the Future. That's what we're seeking. We're seeking the ancient technology that is going to take us to the future. And these hands, as prehistoric and rudimentary as they seem, are yet so modern because they are the same as we are now in this advanced civilization. And when you put yourself in that place, in that position, you can feel your history. You become history. So once again, when we are thinking about our personal development, about becoming fitter, performing better, becoming healthier, and having an individualized expression, developing a smart body, having a physical practice that develops a smart body will also allow us to develop a strong mind, and a strong mind being the capable mind, the specific mind, the one that meets a standard and does it powerfully. Powerfully meaning that it's capable of doing a lot of work over time. Think about how much a more work efficient and effective we have become. And how did we get here? What is it that makes us, the Homo sapiens species, unique? And how have we been the ones that have survived this? Well, two things, and it's probably much more than this, but two things that I want to bring to the forefront are language and imagination. We can speak, we can write, and we can invent things. We use our imagination. And the ability to speak and write are a big revolution in our adaptation over the years. It's really what we call the transition from prehistory, when there was no written documents, to history, when we started to find written documents that express what was happening back then. The problem is that there's a lot of stuff that was written that was made up. And this is where it's important to realize that a belief is, as Peter Halligan says, he's a psychologist in Cardiff, says that a belief is a mental architecture of how we interpret the world. And this puts us in a predicament where we realize that belief and language, that which we think is true and that which we speak, influences how we move, how we behave. And this, as much as it is a gift, can be a curse. And why is this? Well, because when we look at evolution, lasting genetic changes take 1 million years approximately. For you to mutate, basically to alter the way that your DNA is structured, your sequencing, it takes 1 million years. Now, of course, we know that through epigenetics, which is basically the influence of our environment on our genome, it activates or signals our genes to produce different proteins. in other words, to produce different expressions. But basically, a change in genetics can take 1,000,000 years to produce a physical difference. Now, a lasting behavioral change only takes 66 days. This is something that with the 21-day journaling that we've done together, the reason it's 21 days is because at the foundation of changing a behavior, you need approximately 21 days to catalyze a change in behavior. Then it can take up to 258 days, I believe the research says, to actually make that behavior become a permanent habit. In other words, a lasting behavior. And then finally, if you look at the last little piece of data I have here for you, is that a lasting belief change can take approximately 1 second. This is where things get crazy. And it's where the age of information, where information is coming to us so quickly, a 1 second impression, you seeing something that you've never seen before, can change the way that you think permanently, and thus affect the way that you behave. And over time, if you continue to go down that path, will affect your genetic makeup. In other words, we need to become very aware, very conscious of that which is changing our belief system, and realizing that we have our hands on the rudder to some degree. This is where the discussion of free will comes in. Do we have free will, or is it all just a destiny? Well, that which is in our control is the free will. But how aware are we of that which is in our control? A lot of times we forget, and it becomes very little. And it's my thinking that the more aware we become of that which we have control of, even though it's a small rudder on a big ship, it affects some change. And the question is, how do you want to affect change? Moreover, how do you want that change to feel? And this is where the predicament is that we, Homo sapiens, as far as we know, our species is the only species that lives equally in a physical reality and in an imaginary reality. We can believe the myths and stories that we tell ourselves. Although religion has a place for moral conduct, there's a lot of imagination that's used in religion to manipulate and control people. And over the last 2 years, it has become very prevalent to see that people can even use science as a religion to manipulate the way that we think. And this is not to say that one or another is good or bad. It's simply to notice, to realize, to take full responsibility that one of the things that we are story-making machines. And these stories dictate the way that we navigate the world. And this leads us to the hard problem. And the hard problem is the problem of consciousness. And that's what I want to talk to you about over the series of lectures. That's what I want to dive into within Coffee Club. And that's what I want to work with you in regards to your physical practice, to the way that you create an environment, to the habits that you develop, and how these habits are not only influencing you, but influencing others, and how you're managing these resources. And the management of these resources being communicated not only through your behavior, but also through the belief systems and codes that you are using to share what is alive in you. And this is the practice. So today, lecture 1 was just that, was just painting a little picture of who we are historically, or at least who we believe we are for now, and who we are becoming. Okay, that's officially the conclusion of this lecture. Now, if anybody has any comments or anything that they would like to share, I'm going to just open the room for discussion here for 10 minutes. And then we can start to dive into what was coming up as I was sharing. Of course, if anything didn't resonate, or you don't believe in it, or you don't think it's accurate, please share. This is open for discussion. Nothing on my end is final. It is only where it is at this moment. And I share it, as I mentioned earlier, with the intention of painting a picture that allows us to see with clarity and to move in whatever direction we need to move so that we can become a little healthier, have a better experience in our life, and wherever we choose to perform well, not for performative sake, but for the sake of greater exploration. So yeah, the room is open. Anybody who wants to share something or talk, feel free to jump in the chat or unmute yourself, and we'll continue the conversation. So I'll take the silence as this was amazing.
I have a comment.
Very confusing. Okay, go ahead.
I've never heard that before about the 1 second for the belief. That is fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, think about it this way. Let's say you've never, there's something you've never seen before. Maybe you had never seen the internet back in the 90s. And then all of a sudden, you connect to the internet and you realize that you have access to all this data. In that split second, your whole life changes. Everything changes. Yeah, so in 1 second, in one instant.
That's just mind-blowing when you think about it.
This is also the this is also something that we need to think about, is that something traumatic is not always something that is negative necessarily. Something traumatic is something that imprints on you in a way that in your brain becomes an image that you cannot shake, and thus you embody. It gets recorded in your body in an emotion, and that translates into the proteins that are surrounding or on top of your genetic code. That's your epigenome. And that signaling to your genes what proteins to produce. And this production of proteins indicating a change in physiology, and thus putting you now on a completely new course of personal, individualized evolution. That can happen in a split second. Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, in addition to what you just mentioned, what interests me the most is the moment where a human brain can become conscious about the process that you just described. Because how much percentage of what I believe is, especially nowadays where we are mostly in front of the computers, is connected to what is actually happening in reality, and how much, and what my options are in reality, and how much percentage of what I experience, decide, and choose to live is based on the storytelling that I'm processing my life through.
Yeah, and I don't know.
and then like, I think this is super individual, depending on how much a person spends time in nature, what kind of job the person has, what type of personality surround the person in the jobs, luck, and yeah, the actually coming back to the motion thing and the performance thing, how a person is able to move forward in trust and deliberate decision making while being an adult person and dealing with the traumatic episodes that come up while being alive. Yeah, because and this is where, for me, the unconsciousness and consciousness starts to become almost the peak training of me as a growing personality or person, as an adult person, where I'm way more dependent on my own choices than a kid or an adolescent person, maybe, since I almost feel like my DNA starts popping out information without me acknowledging that I'm repeating the same things that my body is just used to print in action. And this is just like super, the awareness of it while being in relationships to people and repeating things is just amazing.
Yeah, it's very complicated. And I think this is why we're doing this. I mean, this is why we're exploring these facets, because we care about evolving. We care about performing well. We care about feeling good. But somehow we get in our own way. And we can say, okay, that's my genes' fault, right? It's like my epigenetics is fucked up. I got some trauma that comes from my ancestors. I need to heal that. But on the other end, our environment is a huge influence on us. So what comes first? The environment or the genes? The environment or the code? And this is a dilemma. How did everything through chaos organize itself in such an intelligent way? There must be something else. There must be something that created this. Maybe, wouldn't it be interesting if it was? I would love that. That would be so cool. But I don't know. And then what happens? All of a sudden we have to label ourselves. Oh, you do not believe in anything past the reality, thus you are an atheist. You don't believe until you see, thus you are agnostic. You believe that Jesus Christ was a descendant or came and embodied, was the Son of God, whoever God was, if that's even a thing. You follow the path of Christ. Okay, that's wonderful. I believe, and this is how I see things, is that every single path is a valid path. Every single belief is a valid belief. Every single piece of information or a trapped emotion or genetic expression is a valid expression. And what is it valid for? It's valid for evolution. All I care about, from my perspective, is to make the process of progress as efficient, effective, and seamless as possible. One of the reasons, because I don't want to suffer. I don't want to feel pain. I don't want to hurt. But I do know that any progress comes with discomfort. And this is healthy stress. Noticing where the healthy stress comes from, what patterns are producing that, and where I'm influencing those, that's the practice. And that's what I'm excited about. And I think the way that you expressed it there, Sarah, was so accurate, is that you, as a grown woman, inside still have the essence of a child. You intellectually have the ability to see your physical reality, what is happening, yet at times wonder, how did you get here? How is this happening again? Even though I've tried to make certain changes, and my experience and relationship to it is dictating to some degree my emotions and thus influencing the way that I see it. And now having to go back over and over and over again, and this being the constant return. My intention is to encourage that constant return, that wonder, and then within the wonder, realizing that the solution will come and will be understood in retrospect. Thus, getting to a point where, okay, it's time that I let go, that I don't think about it anymore. I get to spend an hour on a lecture, think about things that are a little complicated, get a little confused, and then say, fuck it, I'm moving on. I'm going to do whatever I have to do, and I'll let the understanding, the processing, the healing, the whatever it is that has to happen for you to happen. And there, to also create an attitude of trust, trusting that that which you are exploring is going to bring you, just like with agriculture, is going to bring you the nourishment that you're seeking, the fruit that you're seeking. I think that's very powerful. So thank you for sharing that. Christine said, in case you're interested to read more about evolution of your body, specifically breathing, James Nestor breath, I got it right here. Bam. That's that one is a good choice. It gives you some insights on the impact breathing, right, as on your health and well-being, and how evolution has changed your way to breathe. Yeah, in fact, and breathing, James actually explains this pretty well, and there are a few other books that have this. And I think Suzanne asked if I could put together a list of books. Yes, I would happily put together a list of books, but also explains how breathing, of course, has shaped our mouths and our skulls. And this is something that if you've read Born to Run, you've also heard about how one of our superpowers as human beings is that we can last very long. We can outlast a lot of animals that we used to hunt, and we still hunt. That's another thing. You know, for a while I had this impression that hunting was bad, yet I ate meat. And something that I learned over 2 decades ago is that some of the people who are most involved in conservation and regulation of the growth and study of ecosystems are hunters. So a very powerful thing to realize, and that's where a belief can be changed. I've also got to witness friends of mine teaching their kids how to hunt, and I almost get emotional thinking about it, but witnessing the son of my friend hunting his first deer, and having a complete change in the way that he was in relationship with living beings around him, and then utilizing the resource that he had hunted to its fullest, down to the bone. A very, very powerful moment. So this is where a belief can change in a second, and that belief can change a behavior, and that behavior can lead to influencing not only our close circle, but a larger circle. And this is another thing that I didn't mention during the lecture, is that one of our abilities is to manage large groups of people. Chimpanzees can only manage approximately 50 relationships. Human beings, without lies, just with interpersonal skills, can manage 150 relationships. In order to go beyond 150, you have to make something up. You have to tell a story that is not completely true, but one that everybody can agree on. One of those stories that we tell ourselves is money. We have agreed that money is a true story. Same thing happens with religions and other manipulative cultures. You use stories that logically, or at least factually, do not make sense to control large groups of people. And if this is one of our superpowers, how can we tell the most honest story? How can we have imaginary thinking without the influence, without the negative influence? It's practically impossible. But it's a well worth endeavor. any other questions, any other thoughts? Was this interesting? Did this come out of left field? Do you align? Do you feel excited about continuing down these lectures, which will lead to other topics, more specific topics? Yeah, how are you feeling about this? As this is your group, and I would love to hear what your experience was like. Maya says, love this. Great.
I enjoyed a lot that like I'm excited to see the rest of the lectures as well, and I think this is a topic that is being very much missed in the field of performance in sports, where everything is all about, let's say, the future and the look, to simplify it in a way, but we forget where we're coming from, and specifically in a world where we are forgetting a lot of connections. Something that is super clear to everyone in a way, because everyone has been to school and gone through biology and stuff, but it shouldn't be separated to the performance and the awareness for us being equally when it comes to the body and the mind. So yeah, I think it's a very nice bridge to something that is missing in especially in the internet and how people perform and show up.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sarah. And something to keep in mind, and I mean, most of you know me here already, but I like to tackle abstract concepts and tackle that which I'm not necessarily an expert in order to bring to the table people who know more than I do, and thus catalyze a conversation that can further allow us to see. And one of my intentions is to celebrate each unique perspective and to include that in a way that allows each one of us to find clarity, find confidence in the way that we are growing, and having enough security in ourselves to pursue that which is more adventurous. Okay, my friends, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate every single one of you. It's always wonderful to connect with you, and I look forward to more of this. These lectures will be continued. I'll announce the next one soon. I'm going to curate a little list of books, and I'll share those as soon as I can. And then, as I said, we'll continue these conversations in Coffee Club and then in other initiatives that I have planned for the future. But for now, thank you. I appreciate you all. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.